I'm Jeb Butler of the Butler Law Firm. People sometimes ask, why do insurance companies keep calling me, usually after an accident? Why do car insurance companies keep calling me? How do I get insurance companies to stop calling me? How to get insurance companies to stop calling me? Do insurance companies call you? How do I stop insurance companies from calling me? We'll talk about that today. Our topic is what to do when the insurance company calls me after an accident. Now the short answer, before we get into the longer one, is you don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to talk to them. It's your right to talk to a lawyer first if that's what you choose to do. Now we'll address some considerations that come up when we think about these issues. There are several reasons, and we'll go through 3 today, to be careful if an insurance company calls you after a car accident. The first is this. It's a professional on the phone. When you speak to an insurance adjuster, you're talking to someone who does this day in and day out and who is probably going to have an adversarial relationship to you as your claim or your case or the litigation develops. That's because you'll want fair compensation for your injuries, and the insurance company is going to want to hold on to its money. In other words, you want them to pay, and they don't want to pay. So that's an adversarial relationship. And remember, when you talk to a claims adjuster, the person who would call you from an insurance company after a collision, that person is a professional. Having this conversation and trying to win this issue is what they do day in, day out. They've got a lot more practice than you do, because this probably is not your full-time job. The next thing to be cautious about is recordings. Now, when you speak with an insurance adjuster, whether you call them or they call you, you've got to be aware that they might be recording that call, even if they don't tell you that. Many states, including Georgia, are one-party consent states. That means the insurance company or anyone else really that you're on the phone with can record the call without you knowing. So be careful about that. The third reason to be careful is that there may be more going on than you're first aware of. And here's what I mean by that. The sort of things at issue and the things you have to keep in mind aren't restricted to just who's at fault for the collision. Now that matters too. But there's another thing going on, and that is this. What are your injuries? Insurance adjusters who might call you know that. So they're trying to get you to say something that they can use to spin the accident as being your fault, or to suggest that your injuries aren't that serious. This can be an especially dangerous thing because oftentimes the injuries that occur in a collision aren't evident to the person who suffered them until a day or 2 or 3 later. Sometimes the adrenaline from a collision can mask or hide those injuries, and oftentimes the body doesn't get around to telling you what is wrong, and you may not be able to get MRI results or full results from a doctor until a few days after the collision. So what some insurance adjusters will want to do is call you immediately after the collision and see if they can get you to say something they can later use to show that your injuries weren't that serious, so you aren't owed that much money. Now, there are often a couple insurance companies involved in a car accident. Usually it's the at-fault driver's insurance and then your own insurance company. A lot of people think that because they've been paying insurance premiums to their own insurance company for a number of years, that company's going to be on their side. Unfortunately, that's usually wrong. And the reason is, even if you don't know it, your insurance company may offer you or may have to offer you uninsured motorist or benefits. Now we've talked about what is in greater detail in other videos, but basically insurance means that if the other driver doesn't have insurance, if the other driver can't be located because it was a hit and run, or if the other driver doesn't have enough insurance, then in the state of Georgia, your own insurance company may provide underinsured motorist or uninsured motorist coverage, both of which are called for short. And I tell you all that to make this point. If your insurance policy does in fact provide for coverage, then you and your insurance company are going to be adverse, because the insurance company is going to be obligated to pay you money and they're not going to want to do it. So there's going to be a dispute, or there's likely to be a dispute about whether you were at fault, and even if you were not at fault, how much money the insurance company should pay you. In other words, what your injuries were or what your damages were. So even if you're talking to your own insurance company, the minute you have a claim against them, the minute you have a right to collect money for all those premiums you've been paying for years and years, that relationship becomes adverse. And they're going to want to trap you, really, in the same ways that the other insurance company is going to want to do it. They're going to want to try to show that you were at fault or your injuries aren't that serious. So be careful, even when you're talking to your insurance company. So that relationship with your own insurance company can be adversarial in both of the ways we talked about earlier. That is to say, fault and injuries. Be careful. There's another thing to think about. And this is a special consideration for when you're dealing with your own insurance company. Notice and cooperation. Most insurance policies with your own insurance company require that you provide a reasonable notice to the insurance company that you've been in an accident and that you cooperate with their investigation into the claim. These are typically, although not always, parts of your insurance policy, that is, the contract between you and your insurance company. So the notice requirement means that usually within a reasonable time of the collision, you have to let the insurer know that you've been in an accident. And often you're required to cooperate. That is to say that as the case goes on, you're required to provide some minimum amount of information to the insurance company. And if you don't do those things, then they have an excuse to what we call pull coverage or refuse to pay you on your car accident claim. This gets a little bit dangerous because particularly the notice provision often requires you to contact your insurance company, when I've just been telling you all the reasons you should be careful about doing that. So if you do contact them yourself, just be careful about it. But there's another option, and that may be why you're watching this video, but you always have a right to hire and talk to a lawyer who's on your side before you contact the insurance company. If you're going to do that, if you are interested in hiring a lawyer, it's usually best to do so fast for a number of reasons, including the ability to gather evidence that might disappear if we wait too long. But another is so that your lawyer can promptly provide the notice that can be required to your insurance company. That way your lawyer handles these issues, notice and cooperation, and you don't have to do it yourself. Thanks.